There's nothing like luck. Sometimes I'm saying, hey, the guy was lucky, he had the opportunity. It's just someone being prepared and waiting for the opportunity. So that's that intersection between preparedness and opportunity. That's where the luck comes in. And when you're trying to find your ikigai, the first question you ask yourself is, what is it that I want to do? The number 2, is it solving a problem in the world? Number 3, is it making me money? But number 4, will I really enjoy it? I mean,
like what are the key drivers of risk in small businesses that you have seen?
If the business needs to attract finances, it has to be attractive. You have to do things right.
So what needs to happen so that we have a vibrant ecosystem that actually supports the entrepreneurs?
Collaboration. That's all I'll say. And if you come together, you can actually do great for the people that actually need you.
What do you think is the biggest risk? If you have to pick one way, you're like, we need to really as a country get this right so that it actually benefits the population.
The failure of Ugandan businesses and businessmen to run their businesses professionally.
Before we jump in, I think everyone knows you from online, different activities. You've worked with so many entrepreneurs, but I think it's good to hear from you and how you pitch yourself right now, maybe.
Okay. You haven't said everyone knows me from church, which is very, very sad. You only talk about other places. But my name is Tony Otoa. Back in the day, I used to be called Tony T, Black Daddy Sugar Love. That was when I was a DJ. I still do a little bit of DJing and cooking here and there. But I think most people know me around the oil and gas sector. That's where I've spent quite some time. A very long time, actually. But also the entrepreneurship or entrepreneur world, because that's where I spent about a good amount of years. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I venture into many things, including supporting businesses financially, but also doing my own businesses in the oil and gas sector, but also my love for roasting. That's also like a crazy business that I really enjoy doing. So that's me pretty much in a nutshell. I mean, we'll get to discover more as we get into this conversation.
Super amazing. Thank you so much. I wanted especially to touch on 5 things today. Number 1, a little bit of career.
Sure.
And just to hear from you, from your perspective about the topic. Then about oil and gas, of course, that has been your big theme. I hope to find some nuggets there. I'm curious myself. And then, of course, Tony has also worked a lot with entrepreneurs, supported founders, seen so many companies through his work, especially at the Stanbic Business Incubator. So there's definitely some exciting knowledge that we can gain. And then especially also about founders. There's a lot of founders in the room, so I'm very curious about how you look at founders, what you have observed in the most successful ones. And lastly, topic number 5 is going to be about investment. That's always the big one. So I'm very curious about your perspective there. Okay. So I think let's jump right in.
Sure thing.
I mean, you started your career actually in the oil and gas sector, right? Then you went to the bank. Yes. Then you went into the business support and back to oil and gas. So I'm curious, what were your career goals when you started right out of uni? How did you think about the career? And then also, what would you do differently now?
What would I do differently now? I don't think I would do so many things differently. I think every part of my career has been a very interesting journey. But my career starts from my senior 6 vacation, pretty much, because that's when I started working. Yep. That's when I started hustling. My first job was a turn boy. I was a turn boy on a truck. Now, how many of you know what a turn boy does? Yeah, so I was a turn boy, the guy who pulls the Tundu Valley when the rain is coming, and I was a turn boy on a truck. That was my first job. We used to move dry fish from Jinja in Masese all the way to Soroti in Bali, and then bring back dry cassava, take it to the maize mill, which was called in a place called Kazimingi, have it milled and sell it. I then became a DJ on KFM. I was actually the first Friday night, Saturday night DJ. Those days, we used to use CDs. Nowadays, guys are cool. They use BPMs and PCDJ and all of these things. We use CDs, which had 18 songs or 18 tracks. You play a track, and then, you just pray you get the next song from the next CD. And if it doesn't come through, You play it again, if the DJ likes the song, he plays it twice, that kind of thing. And then I decided, okay, this is amazing. It's amazing, but it's not really cutting it. The money was not enough. So I became a journalist at the same time. And I was the youngest ever Secretary General of the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association. I had never been to journalism school, just decided to take on the hassle, just decided to try out and do something that excites me. Moved into Parliament, moved into political reporting. I covered a lot of war stories in the war zones, Congo, DRC, Northern Uganda, all these places.
How did you get in there? How did you get into?
It's so interesting.
Working with the Parliament?
So my journalism story is quite interesting. I tried to get into Monitor, or KFM at the time, and Monitor, but it was so difficult. There was a lady called Rachel Mugarura. She was the news editor. And I remember, whenever I would run around, with a small recorder, you go around Kampala looking for some confusion. And when you see confusion, you try and record. And then you realize, these guys are arguing about something basic. Then you go to the next spot. And it was always difficult to find a real story.
Yeah.
Then on this good day, it's a very bad day, but it was a good day for a journalist. The Uganda People's Congress, the UPC, was marching from City Square to Uganda House. Mm-hmm. And I was the only lucky guy that day coming into town looking for confusion who found confusion. So this is me, I'm moving around, Agri Awori, we are singing, hey mama, we're marching, and we get to Uganda House.
Were you reporting or marching?
I was reporting. I'll make it clear, I was reporting. And out of the blue, in Uganda, we call it Chiboko. Mm. Where these guys came from, these military guys, they started caning. And that is the time when a journalism student was shot dead. Oh. A journalism student called Jimmy Higeni. And I was the only person recording at the time. So I remember running to KFM, and Rachel and the security guys are like, no, we told you never to come back, I was like, no, just play this one thing. And she listened to it, and she was like, oh, are these the gunshots I was hearing? And I was like, yeah, that's the stuff. And then she went on air, cut the program, and it broke as breaking news. And then she tells me, you know what? Okay, I think we can work with you. So come back on Monday, and let's see what we can do with you. I go back on Monday. Now before I went back, I went to a window market to buy, the journalism jackets, the ones with the many pockets, right? Because I had to be the part. Go on Monday, and I am asked to write the story using a computer. Bro, when you're looking for Q, and then you don't know where T is, and then you're looking for enter, it was just a mess. But I remember it took me a very short time to get used to the whole thing, the whole reporting. And there was a guy called Paul Herrera who really helped me advance me in that sport. So I managed to do that. Then I got bored, as usual. Around that time, many of my contemporaries were going to the UK for what they call Cheyo. Yeah. So I go to Makerere University where I had started my studies, and then I drop out. So I dropped out in my first year, first sem. Because all I was doing, I was in Lumumba, all we were doing was waiting for the next riot, the next action, it was always fun, and I was hardly in class. So I decided to quit, and I remember going home and telling my old man, I think things are not, Kampala is not Kampalaring. Yeah? I think I need to go abroad and see what's happening. And I remember my father laughing at me and telling my mom, Mama Jim, come and listen to your son, repeat for your mother, and my mother's like, oh, I'm like, this guy, there's no plot here. So I went back to my one-bedroom shack in Namuongo. I had a very small, nice bedroom, a very small room in Namuongo. And I had to think about what to do next. I sold off my small TV and my small fridge, got some money, waited for my salary to come through. Now, those days, it was easy to actually go into a bank and ask a teller to give you a bank statement, someone else's bank statement, okay? All you had to do was just to give them money, and, they ask you, do you want a big one or a small one? And you're like, I don't want so many questions during the interview process, so do a medium one, yeah? So I do that, I get my bank statement, I get all these documents, and I go to the British High Commission at the time on Parliament Avenue for this visa process. Now, those days you had to line up in the night. You had to line up in the night, and then around 6 a.m. they would ask you to move into, the embassy or the High Commission. So this is me at 9 p.m. the day before with Uncle Trev, my very cool young uncle, fake guy, but very cool, nice uncle. And we arrive, and when we arrive, we're so early. So I tell him, you know what, why don't you just hold my space or my spot? Let me go sleep at the studio. I'll be back in the morning around 3, so we can, go into this process. I come back in the morning at 3, Uncle Trevor had sold my space, and whoever he had sold to had also sold, so I was at the back of the queue. Now, at the back of the queue, you don't even know whether you might be allowed to go in. But anyway, when you're out there, there's a lady doing Rolex and tea and everything, and there's a coach. When they ask you about this big thing with a bell, say, that's Big Ben. Say, yeah, okay. And then this one that goes round, that's London Eye. Okay. We're coaching, right? Because we're tourists. We're going as tourists. Because when they ask you what are you going to see, you need to be able to say that. So in the morning, British guy comes, takes us in. Now, we're in that place. That place is so weird. When you're in, you can only leave after you've been interviewed. And you can only know, or when you're leaving, you can only know whether you've got your visa or not.
You will know it right there.
Bro. Now, even my coaches, the guys who were coaching us on London Eye, were getting out with Banyimi. So the failure rate was so high that I also believed I was wasting my time.
But your bank statements were good.
Well, it's 1 o'clock. I'm hungry. I'm tired. So my turn comes at about 1 o'clock. And interestingly, I just learned the word apparently. It was a cool word, apparently. So I go into the interview booth. Hello, mate. I say, hello. Where are you going? I say, apparently I'm going to the UK. I was like, wow, apparently you're going to the UK, okay. So what are you going to do? I said, apparently I'm going as a tourist. So this brother was tired. I'm tired. We're not jamming. We're not flowing. And he decides, I'll come back tomorrow for your visa. So I get my visa. I go out. Uncle Trev is waiting with our money from selling the sports. We go to a place called TLC, have a good time, buy beers for people we don't know. Come back the next day, pick up my visa, and I go back to my old man and say, you know what, bro? I've done the heavy lifting. Why don't you just get me a ticket so we can go? Old man laughs again. Calls my mom. Mama Jimmy, come and listen to this guy.
He wants money for a flight.
So, 6 months visa, tourist visa. Month 1, I'm here. Month 2, I'm here. Month 3, I'm here. Now, when you've sold your stuff and now you're strategizing on which rich uncle to go to. You go buy an house special with the money that you've, sold your stuff on. You're strategizing. I had abandoned my job because I now wanted to focus on looking for money. Like an entrepreneur, you have to focus on one thing, right? And I remember month 6, I'm still in Nigeria, and my friend Roland, my very good friend, my best friend up to today, had a friend who would lend us her car over the weekend. She was called Hannah. So one weekend she lends us a car, and I tell Roland, that car gotta go. So we took it to a money lender in Makindye.
No way.
Yeah. No, we gave it to a money lender. We told him no worry about the
friends with Hannah still?
No, she actually threw Roland into jail after that, by the way. But anyway, so what was so interesting about that was we got the cheapest ticket. I managed to fly to the UK. How I got there, that's again another miracle. So I lived illegally for 6 years. And during that time, I was a car wash guy. I worked at a car wash. And then after, about 8 months, moved into TGI Fridays, where I was, I began off as a dishwasher. From the dishwasher guy, I became, the guy working on the cold station, making salads and sandwiches. And then I moved into fry and finally the grill. So many of you, when you see my social media, you'll see me grilling a lot. Now, many people don't know where that comes from. And usually when I go to people's parties, I always just away the grilling guy, the mix Royco and what, and all these boring things. It makes meat so that is what I did. And I was the main grill guy at TGI Fridays. And if you know TGI Fridays, it's known for its grilling stuff. So that's what I did. And
Nice.
I decided to go back to school or university when I was 27. So I was a school dropout. That time, there was a thing called High Five, High Five and MySpace.com. And most of my friends were driving, had cool jobs. I was like, oh my God, I am just a school dropout.
But you were good at barbecuing.
Well, but it was working for someone else, so it wasn't making me money. And you know what was so funny about London at the time was this Ugandan guy tells me, man, stop staying at your auntie. You're a big guy, you have to move into your own space. So he gives me a cloak room. As you enter the house, there's a cloak room, right? This cloak room, you couldn't fit a bed. So I had to go to Argos, I bought an air bed. Now that air bed with a foot pump, you have to pump it. At 3 a.m., there's no air, so you have to wake up and pump that guy. And after pumping it, then now I also had there was no heater, right, or heating system. So I had to buy one of those small heaters with a coil inside on the front. It had no regulator. So, you're sleeping and it's so hot, you're roasting. Then you switch off. Then you're sleeping, it's so cold. Then you switch it on. Man, it was so crazy. But those times taught me humility. So when I went back to school, I remember I decided to just go back to school because I felt it was the only thing to do right for my parents. So I decided to go back to school through UCAS, settled for Oxford Brookes University. I did my degree in law and international relations. I worked 3 jobs, by the way, to do that. Again, part of my career growth process. I worked 3 jobs because I would go to school between 9 to 2. And then I would go to Ladbrokes between 2. Ladbrokes is a betting farm, just like your betting shops here as a cashier, from 2 to about 8. Then I would go to a kitchen in Headington in Oxford from 8:30 to midnight.
It's crazy.
Cleaning and cooking last orders. Then go to the post office from midnight to 4.
So what are the key things that you took away from that? You've worked a lot.
It's just the whole idea of no can never be it, and you just have to keep pushing.
Yeah.
You just have to keep pushing. Because I remember, Matthias, you won't understand this, but when you go to the bursar's window and your fees or balance is like about £8,000 and you're giving the guy £500 and he's shouting, hey, but we're going to take you off the system. It's like, be cool. I know. Just don't shout. Be cool. I know. And then you have and then you have to make friends with the rich kids who can give you their cards so you can have access to the library and the computer room. I mean, you learn how to network, you learn how to, all of these things. So I did that, finished that. A friend of mine got me a good job in Qatar. That's where things change a little bit. Come back, do my master's in international law at the same university in Oxford. And then I finished that. And then I come back to Uganda. And when I come back to Uganda, because Oxfam, the company or the organization I was working with, had given me a job in Ghana. I come back to Uganda and I'm thinking, let me just go back to Uganda. So I came back without a plan.
You went into oil and gas then, right?
Now that is when I get into oil and gas.
How did that job interview go?
Now, this is
when they asked you about your experience, what did you say?
So this is how I get into oil and gas. So a friend of mine called Angelo and a couple of guys, we set up a company called Great Lakes Public Affairs. We were the guys who help you have a soft landing when you come to Uganda. So you want to know anyone or you want to meet anyone, we're your guy. So the Chinese really made us. We got money from the Chinese, bro. If you wanted to meet anyone, no problem. And then, of course, we work through our system to look for a guy who knows the guy and how we can get to him. And we deliver the guy and we get our money. We were making good money. Then I get a call from Total. And they asked to meet at 6 p.m. I'm like, that's a bit of a weird time, 6 p.m. We're going into real big money now, man, real big money. So we go, they say, no, we're only talking to you, The rest can stay out in the reception. So we sit, this lady called Ahlem starts talking to me about life, how is life, like, bro, when is the deal dropping, man? When is the deal drop? And then that's when she decides to tell me they were looking out for someone to support them with public affairs.
Okay, nice.
So that is when I get into public affairs, my public affairs role. I was part of the 3-man team that began the conversations around the ECOP route, the pipeline route. So I did the negotiations on that in the beginning, from our first engagements with Kenya, the ones that failed, and then moving into Tanzania. So that was pretty much what I really did around that time. I then moved into local content, supported with the policies and the laws that were finally enacted as well in the country by the parliament. Supported with getting the local content formulas and all of that into all the current contracts in the oil and gas space. And 2018, I get bored. I decide, I think it's time for me now to start now doing stuff that makes me feel entrepreneurial.
Yep.
So I decided to quit my job and go back to the village into farming. And we've been talking about farming, which was, if you want to learn how to be a hardcore entrepreneur, go into farming, please. It will harden you because, hey, I was telling guys, I did fish. There was no market for the fish. I drove around Lira looking for market in my Land Rover. People say they can't buy fish from an ambulance. It was so tough, And then I told you about I didn't tell you about my maize. I planted maize. I got some extra prisoners to help me cultivate or till the land. And, we waited for the great harvest. We had budgeted. Farming makes you plan in a funny way, Man, I was looking at my account with millions of money. But it rained that season. It rained. It rained that out of the 30 million we invested, we only got 700K. That's when I said I need a job. Yeah. I need a job.
So but anyway, through all your savings, you did agriculture?
Gone. And now I'm into goats, and the goat farming for me is good because those guys just roam. They roam and do their thing. And I think for me that's a comfort area. But I get a call from Patrick Mayhew at that time. He was the CEO of Stanbic. And I was at the village. I was in the village market. Now in Lira, there's Malwa. And I had some small money, so I was buying crates of Eagle Lager. And I can tell you, people had given me votes even before I'd said I want to be an MP. Say, Junior, you're a very good man. When are you coming to be MP? We will support you. Even now, even if you come, we will. I said, this is a very good thing.
So capturing hearts is struggle. That's the mental note taken.
It softens hearts. It softens hearts. So Patrick calls me, and to be honest with you, I was happy. Yeah, I was happy, so I did not register the call. And then he calls back after a week. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, have you considered what we talked about? I'm like, considered what? Considered coming to join us at Stanbic. Like, doing what? Like, we want to have you head our, be head of enterprise development. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? So I'm like, you know what? This is a crazy thing. First of all, I've never worked in a bank before. I do not even know what people really do. So give me a couple of days to freshen up, look like a city boy and
push the last crates of people.
And also go say bye to my future voters and then come through, So I come into Kampala, go into his office, and instantly he's like, there's a head of people and culture, Moses Mbuvi, and there's him, and it's like, yeah, so are you ready to start? I'm like, what do you mean start? Like, yeah, I thought we were starting today or something. I'm like, no,
no contract.
So he's like, well, I want you to start on this role. You'll learn a lot. You'll come and support us with our oil and gas story around enterprises and businesses and that. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. So I bring in my paperwork the next day and I start after a week. Now, I don't know how many of you have been in a situation where you have never, ever understood what's going on. I'm in this meeting, and bankers and their acronyms, bro. NIIR, PL, KYC. I'm just nodding my head, because you need to look intelligent,
exactly.
Right?
You
just keep nodding your head.
Notes,
you're just hoping that no one says, what do you think, Mr. Otoa, right? You're just nodding your head. And it was quite interesting, but I got into the whole space, loved it so much, developed it so well, and found myself in less than 18 months rising to the top. I moved to become, I was appointed chief executive at the Stanbic Business Incubator, which I then started in 2018, molded, got a lot of entrepreneurs through that space. In a very short time, I was like, number 2, number 3 at Stanbic. It was like, so it was that quantum leap that I can't explain, as in if I try to explain it to someone, it's a bit weird, So again, I get bored. So I've done this thing. I've taken the incubator to where I believe I can take it, and now it needs someone else with a different mindset to take it away. Because you remember when we were having conversations, I had gotten to a point of burnout,
Yeah.
I'm like, I've
You were actually
trained
thinking of
close
going
to
fully
3
back into agriculture, right? You were exploring options.
I'd gone into agriculture to also learn my mistakes and see if now new things work. But I had worked with about over 2,000 entrepreneurs, seen businesses rise in the oil and gas space, including Inspector. I had someone from Inspector Africa. Was it Inspector Africa? Now, let me tell you a story about Inspector Africa. I knew Inspector Africa when it was a briefcase company. No location, no office, no nothing, man. And my friend Nicholas would always come. He was like, I really want to do that big job around piping. And I'm like, Nicholas, bro, you need to get yourself organized. Like, no, what do I need? So when I joined the incubator, he was one of the first people in my cohort of 34. And after he graduated, we took the business through ISO certification and oil and gas certification. Today, they are doing close to $20 to $30 million of contracts in the oil and gas space.
That's impressive.
Today, they do all the inspections on ECOP, the East African Crude Oil Pipeline. They're doing all the stuff as well in the oil fields for Kingfisher and Tilenga.
That's
so for me, those are the stories that I like looking back and
great.
saying, okay, I did that, but I can't be the only guy with the ideas. There has to be someone else to come and do that. So I quit. And when I quit, I get a call from Europe. And that is how I end up in Europe now.
So they
I don't want you to tell
they didn't
them
allow
I'm
you
going
to
quit.
go back in agriculture.
No. So
They wanted to help you safeguard the savings you had.
Well, it was such a short period to go back exploring agriculture. But I think it was for me a very good time to just realize that now I understand how the financial world moves. I understand how debt works. I understand how what it takes to look for capital. How hard it is and how to work on the right partnerships for capital and all of that. So it's been a very, very interesting journey for me.
So from this really career journey with a lot of up and downs, learnings all the way, what do you advise a graduate here in Uganda for their own career journey? What should they do with a long-term view?
I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker because a lot of people say, that guy is a motivational speaker. I just want to speak about my own experience. I think for me, it's about the process.
Yeah.
We always give up at the point when things are about to start happening. For any business, there's always this idea that, when when we're doing a business plan and we say, by month 6, we'll now be hitting profits, and you're thinking, okay. But ideally, for any business, just like any human being, a 10-year period is good enough to show you whether your business idea is worth holding on to or not. Yeah. And usually most businesses that are actually successful start really going up in their 7th, 8th year. And by their 10th year, they're getting there. Now, most of us, when things don't work out, the first instance or the first time is say, and because of that, most ideas are left not fully explored.
And that's why they don't grow, right? Like you see it already on university campuses where we work a lot. And the students having 3 businesses and they move on. Once it gets hard, you move to the next one. You just put it on hold. It's like, let me try again later.
Absolutely.
Let me go to the next one.
Absolutely.
So you don't solve the hard challenge that you need to solve to
Absolutely.
grow.
I mean, if you think about, I have my coach, my business coach is Aga Setalala. And Aga has told me, even for his father's business, but also his own personal business, he has struggled. Yeah. There are points where you actually, you're not paying yourself, you're not sleeping, you have all this crazy debt that you've probably accumulated, and you still need to make money. Yep. But most of us, when that period comes, we tend to give up. And that's what's really sad about it. When I was in the entrepreneur space, for me, it just proved to me that, again, some of us are jumping into ventures we're not really passionate about. Yep. Because you see, if you're passionate about something, you're willing to go the extra mile to do whatever it takes, whether you're making money or not.
And for those going into careers, what do you advise them if they don't have the chance to maybe go to the UK and figure it out there? What's your advice for someone starting a career here in Uganda?
There was a tweet today. If you looked at my Twitter today, there was a very interesting motivational speaker called Pepe. Let me probably read it out. Pepe said, there are 4 kinds of professionals in a workplace. Okay? Now listen to this very well. Number 1, those ahead of their time. At 25 years old, they're mid-level managers with 2 master's degrees. At 30 years old, they're already a senior manager or general manager of a large institution. And at 35 years old, they're a CEO of a multinational company and sought after for board positions in large corporations. Only 10 years of working experience, but in charge of 5 regional markets across 2 continents. Number 2, those right on time. 25 years old, a junior officer. 30 years old, a supervisor. At 35 years old, a mid-level manager with a master's degree. At 45 years old, a senior manager, head of a department. Most likely they'll retire at this level. Chances of them becoming a CEO one day, 50-50. Number 3, those behind their time. 25 to 35 years old, still an officer at entry-level jobs. 35 years old, a junior supervisor. 40 years old, a mid-level manager. 50 years old, Exco -1. Chances of becoming one day CEO only exist after they retire and start their own businesses. Number 4, the non-starters. At 35 years old, still a junior officer, entry-level job type. 45 years old, still an officer, but also the vice chairman of the company circle. At 50 years old, a union leader, but still a junior officer. At 50 years old, same job rank, but part of the board of trustees of the company, pension fund, and one of the most experienced and long-serving officers with a good institutional memory. And then he goes on to say, in view of these 4 categories of professionals, where will you place your own career? Where will some of you place some of your colleagues? And this is the reason why I found this wrong. And I responded to him by saying this. I told him, this was my response. I was like, my dear comrade Pepe, I will disagree respectfully on this one. At 25 years old, I was working in a kitchen in the UK hustling. No degree, no masters, no idea where I would end up. At 30 years, I was home looking for a corporate job. I started at an NGO, and by 38, I was a CEO of a multinational, which is Stanbic. The rest is history. And I went on to say, I think we all have different paths in life. Some people have quantum leap situations, like myself, while others do not. And again, I'm not saying that this is what everyone should go through, but we're all built different. Yeah. So again, to answer your question, I just can't, I don't have a silver bullet. I don't have like a blueprint. The truth is, it's the process that we just have to just go through and then figure out what our passions are. You know, I like this. I'm very stoic, and we kind of mirror the Ikigai principles. You know, yep. Where's your passion? And when you're trying to find your Ikigai, the first question you ask yourself is, what is it that I want to do? The number 2, is it solving a problem in the world? Number 3, is it making me money? But number 4, will I really enjoy it? I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know why Japanese live long? They live long because they do what they enjoy doing. Now, there's a difference between a job and work. Yeah. You know that. A job is what you clock in every day, huh? And the boss tells you you'll even come late and all that stuff. Work is what you do until the day you die. So what is it that we're passionate about? Is it your job or your work?
I think that's super good. When we do career trainings and soft skill trainings and so on, it's one of the key principles. And I think there needs to be much more reflection about it. It can be quite transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely.
Thanks for those insights. I'm curious about oil and gas. Of course, you're in the industry for a long time. I think we've seen a lot of countries where oil was found and it hasn't benefited the general population, right? Yeah. So that's always a big question. And that's also, like, I've talked to so many people who finally said, is it really a good thing that we found oil? I'm not so sure, right? Yeah. So what needs to happen so that oil is actually going to be a good thing for the Ugandan people on the large scale, not just for a few? And what's your view on that, on oil in Uganda in that regard?
Truth is, I know you're going to say I'm biased, but this is the truth though. Or if you don't think it's the truth, just for now, take it as the truth, right? Uganda, unlike other countries, is quite an amazing story. You know, we discovered commercial deposits of oil in 2006, same time as Ghana. You know what Ghana did? Before they could deal anything, they rushed into commercializing it. What Uganda did was to set laws policies that will guide the sector, and then also set up institutions that will manage the sector. My institution, the Uganda National Oil Company, and the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Now, by setting that means that you're already setting a framework that can support how we deal with this resource. Today, Ghana is coming to Uganda to benchmark on how we are doing things right. Is that ironic?
Interesting. Yeah.
They have environmental issues, they have local content issues that are happening that did not go well. The locals were not prepared, so it benefited a whole group of people who were so foreign, because oil and gas in Africa for many countries is a new thing,
Yeah.
and you have to understand the whole industry. Full of standards, it's a long-term game, capital intensive, so on and so forth. So will it benefit Uganda? Of course it will. It's already benefiting Uganda. I'm one of those beneficiaries in terms of my business that I'd set up, that was doing a lot of work before things slowed down. But also, in terms of jobs and opportunities, I think we've seen right now close to 13,000 people employed in the sector, either indirectly or directly or in the induced situations. But so many people are now focusing in that area for young people when we talk about career.
Yep.
In terms of the contribution to the economy, just last weekend we were at State House where we signed off the implementation agreement for the refinery. Mm-hmm. That refinery alone is going to add value to our GDP, 9%. 9% additional value to the GDP annually. Yep. Now, when you add the Kabalega Industrial Park, it's close to 20%. That is huge for this economy.
Yeah, it's massive.
Now, my question for me, or how I would frame this question is, are we prepared to deal with that? Yeah, because there's so much opportunity. And, there's the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice, when you go to a buffet, I'm not talking about people with bad manners at a buffet. When some people, when they see a buffet, they want to have everything on the buffet, including the fruits that they put on top of the food. The paradox of choice is in such a way that when you have so many things to choose from, you're in a decision paralysis. And because of that, you can't do so much. And that is what probably would be the situation, because we're going to have so much opportunity where people will get into paralysis of what do I do, how do I do it?
That almost sounds like these questions in the job interviews of what is your biggest weakness? We have too many opportunities. But what do you think is the biggest risk? If you have to pick one way, you're like, we need to really as a country get this right so that it actually benefits the population.
I think for me, I'll actually speak about my experience right now and what I've seen happen. The failure of Ugandan businesses and businessmen to run their businesses professionally. Okay. Many of them have failed on their timelines because you see, it's such a very stringent sector when it comes to timelines. Yeah. If something is supposed to be done in 2 months, it's 2 months. But Ugandan does a fail. Because it is coming. We shall finish it. And when you see the job, it will be a very good job. You will like it. But you see, most companies, because everything is time sensitive. A rig alone on stand for a day, you have to pay close to 100,000 plus US dollars for a day. Now, when that rig is not operating because some guy hasn't moved something, that's a cost. So again, that's one of the biggest issues, the risk of not running businesses professionally. So much of the construction right now has, gone a little bit slow because, again, professionalism in the Ugandan businesses. Okay, interesting. And again,
do you see the sector pushing businesses to operate more professionally? Is that something you're already observing, or it's a bit too slow?
So
not yet.
There's been so much conversations around professionalizing businesses. I talked about Inspector, super professional. How come they're hacking it and then other businesses are not hacking it? What is the issue? It's a mentality. It's a mentality.
And especially of the founders, right? Because they set the culture.
It's a mentality.
If you don't set the culture that, we can't allow that things.
And you see, we also deal in I call it a deals economy. I know a guy who can get me that job. I know a guy who can get me that thing. For the last month, I've been bashed on social media about jobs that, we posted jobs with good intentions, and we said, guys, there are jobs, please apply. And there's a guy called Okello who posted and said, useless, they can never even employ a guy like Okello. I decided, no, this guy is my brother. Let me step in and explain. So I jumped in and said, Abarokelo, me, I'm called Otoa. The guy used a certain word. I won't mention the word. And he said, you're just a sample space. I retreated. But anyway, back to what I was saying. It's just that we always think that to get an opportunity in the oil and gas sector, you have to know someone to create and yet the truth is, you have to do things to standard. You have to have the right paperwork. You have to have the right framework. But most importantly as well, capital. Yeah. So one of the biggest things, and it's not only in the entrepreneurial space, access to working capital. Because you see, payments are made according to milestones. Now, I talked about it being very capital intensive. And you'll find a guy, all the great intentions, he's gotten the job, the opportunity, he's gotten the contract, but he has no capital. So now, what happens in that situation is that he fails on his obligations. And what happens again is that he's blacklisted, and once he's blacklisted, that's it. So that's the funny thing, or that's the sad thing that's happening in the space, And for me, the risk is not getting our people or enough people to a point where we're comfortable with them doing magic in the sector.
And it's super interesting because from working with entrepreneurs for 7-8 years now, there's really many sectors where a key value proposition can just be to be reliable and timely.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? Like in other markets, the bar is so much higher, and this is what we need to over time get away with.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you know much about. I don't know if you realize this about flights and the airline industry. You'll find that a lot of people will not care about how bad a plane is because they believe and know they're reliable. When it comes to time, they'll settle for the right time. I'm not going to mention names. But you know them, where times are never, considered. I mean, it's just like you're running a taxi. So,
exactly.
So reliability is a very important thing, and especially in today's entrepreneurial space, if you think about it, most people buy the business owner or the workers or the people in the business. They don't buy the business or whatever the business is selling, and that is really about what goes back to how the workers and the culture is in the institution. Which is, are they ethical? Are they time? Do they do things on time? Are they to a standard? I always have a mantra. In my roasting business, the best or nothing. If it is not a nice rib, don't take it out. Tell the guy we're getting you 2 nice ribs to replace the other one. The best or nothing, and that's a principle that I like because it makes people come back. It makes people value or value your business, but also it helps grow your business. In most situations here, when the food is not to standard and the guy complains, you're like, you go to another place if you're not feeling this food.
So where does this come from? Because I mean, if you think about company growth, retention is the most important thing, which comes from customer satisfaction, right? But then why is it the case that is it the more short-term thinking, chasing the deal instead of the playing the long-term game, or where does it come from your experience working?
From my experience, I'll be honest with you. Look at a business that is owned by someone that is invested in it, spends time in the business.
Has put their own cash.
Puts in their own cash. I mean, spends time in the business. You'll find that they're more reliable when it comes to dealing with the customer as compared to someone who has thought of a gig or a good idea and has a team working for them. They only just come in the evening to balance the books. How was business?
The corporate employee.
That's it. So you'll find that people tend to drift to these smaller businesses. I know of small restaurants that actually make bigger sales than some of the big restaurants we have in town. Why? Because the food is reliable. There's a very small restaurant in Tinder Market. I like going there once in a while. It's called If Not, Why Not? You know it. Now, for many of you who have never eaten pested chicken, I encourage you to try it out. Trust me. They always say this food is so tasty that it will make you slap your mama, because they always say your mama is the best cook. The food is so tasty it will make you slap your mama. But I mean, it's such a small business. But if you see the kind of people who go there and the volumes, their turnover is crazy. They're always packed, And you ask yourself, but why? Why? It's not like they are a Java kind of situation, but they're so personal with the customer, and they make so much sales, And for me, that is what I talk about, the owner or the entrepreneur being invested.
So let's talk a bit more about Uganda's, especially the traditional enterprises.
Right.
So if we look at the ecosystem, the broader support ecosystem, you've been in the space, the government, but also the founders. What are the key things that each of these three needs to get right so that we see better, more reliable, and faster growing companies here on the ground? Let's start with government. What does government have to do better to actually support it, build a better framework for these businesses to actually thrive?
Okay, when I was at the incubator, one of the things that we were pushing for was for tax holidays for local businesses. I'm glad that has come out now. It's one of those policies that is going to be implemented starting from the 1st of July, the financial year. We've been giving incentives to foreign investors, but not the local investors. Anyone who has 500 million below, nothing comes to them. The truth is, it's the first 3 years of any business I've had.
They're hard.
You just have to keep pumping in money until you get lift off. Now, to understand that, I think the government has finally understood that and it has got it right. That's one of the things, the idea of easing up, the tax situation on an entrepreneur. There's an entrepreneur we gave money when I was doing a UNDP project, and he was supposed to do a methanol project. When we went to check on the methanol project, we just found nothing. When we asked him why,
he had a new car.
He had a very nice car, by the way. He said, business is hard. I tried to look for the potential market, and I think I had failed on my projections. But you see, clearly, those are the wrong people to now support. So, number one, we need to be very intentional about the tax situation. Number two, we need to be able to ease up on the finances for capital. What are these finances that we can get for capital? I mean, I like all of these programs, PDM and all of these. They're very good programs. But in the entrepreneur space, you need to have a deliberate support to entrepreneurs, And for instance, if you look at what PSFU and MasterCard were doing, that is something great. But again, it can be done better. Targeting, your founders, guys with the good ideas that we are, failing to see because they don't have that financial push.
You've also worked in banking, and banks are making a killing. The profits are soaring.
That's what they do. Now I can gladly say that.
It's so risky, and we can't give capital at more affordable rates, right? And you're still paying your 15 to 25% interest rate on collateralized loans. So, what's the role of government there? Because of course there is a strong lobby to prevent any changes there, to protect the profits. Do you think that's a place that should be touched and that can be touched by government?
It should be, but you see, the thing is that you're working with entities, because these are private banks that are, working in a way that, for them, what's most important is the profit, right?
Of course.
Okay. So now, if it's the profit, I'm happy that Stanbic actually led the way with the incubator, putting in, processes or some funding to support businesses in their operations. But beyond that, it has to be about money. But again, these are profit-focused companies, so that becomes a little bit of a trick. But more importantly is the whole idea of, and how can I put it?
But back to government, right? It's still about government.
Most banks would love to lower their risk.
Of course.
Entrepreneurs, just like the guy I just told you about. Let me just give you a very interesting story. There's a guy, the bank loaned money. This guy was supposed to set up a school. And he came with nice drawings, blueprint. The school looked great. We're like, wow, this is good. He even talked about SDGs, education. I was like, wow, this is really good. When the bank went to check on the project, they found a liquor factory. Liquor. So they asked the guy, they said, but boss, the future is waiting. What is happening? The guy said, I did a recalculation and the return on investment on the school was going to be a hard paper. So here, how are things? So we said, anyway, how are things? He said, I'm about to even clear your money, by the way. In the next few months, will be good. And indeed, the liquor factory was booming. So banks are kind of scared of that. And if you've noticed today, banks are lending long-term projects and government.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's more guaranteed. Governments don't run away. Governments don't go to Congo. Governments don't, they are there.
Yep.
No. I'm not talking about. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it's
sure.
safer in terms of the
of
risk,
course.
okay?
Of course.
So that disadvantages your entrepreneur, your founder, your small business
So
person.
what can government do to even the playing field a bit?
I think it's just allocating funds for that. Allocating funds.
Government
for that.
itself,
Yes.
through like UDB, etc.
UDB. And again, UDB also has to come lower
Yeah.
for an entrepreneur. I've looked at the process that, I tried to get a UDB loan for my agriculture situation, and it's a long process, a long process of due diligence. And you see, entrepreneurs, especially the Gen Zs and millennials, they're erratic. They don't have time to wait, and that's why a lot of the mobile apps that are doing a lot of lending are making a killing of a lot of people because it's quicker, it's more efficient. So I think we need to, again, ease in the way of getting this money, lower it, but also ease in access to that money.
So you said it's all about risk. What do these small businesses need to do to lower their risk profile in front of banks? Like what are the key drivers of risk in small businesses that you have seen?
Okay, so I always say this. It's like going to a disco if you're a guy, and you're going to woo a girl named Sugar, right? The first thing you need to do is to smell nice. Make sure at least you have some money, so when they see you at the counter, you're not just playing around, you have a drink all the time. And you are attractive. Because once you do that, you're instantly attractive to the girl dem. Now, same thing with the business. If the business needs to attract finances, it has to be attractive. You have to do things right. If I want to lend you my money, and I ask you for your books right now, Matthias, can you bring them up today? Can
So
you
it's
bring them up
financial structures, especially?
Financial structures, but also how it's run. The people.
Yep.
People always look at the people.
Of course.
In Uganda, we're in a society where my auntie's problem is my problem.
Yep.
We call it the black tax, right?
Yep.
Your uncle, when an uncle dies in the village, instantly, Junior, the other uncle. We say, which uncle? The other one of the other place he has died. That's how my people speak. And instantly, you have to remove money from your business to send. So again, what is business money? What is personal money? What is, all of these things.
So financial structures, people, anything else?
I think for me, it's really that. It's really, really
Yeah,
that.
and I agree. It's interesting. We run financial and accounting services that we sell to entrepreneurs now.
Right.
Work with like 40 entrepreneurs right now. And they always come to us when they are looking for money. Right, and then sometimes we need to tidy up 2-3 years backwards. Right. It's like you scramble through mobile money statements and so on, and
because all of that will be needed
build up
by
the
whoever.
books of account and get them ready, and it would be so much cheaper and
You
easier
do not
if you do it immediately.
You do not cook the financial.
We don't cook. I mean, we only take what's actually there, right?
Okay,
If you have your receipts, your statements. No, but also even those that appreciate it's the same thing. Like sometimes they come, okay, but tax wise, what can we do? Like, what are my options here? And I think actually I sometimes think that the ecosystem will be built around capital and investment because that forces you to do things differently.
Yeah. But again,
and grants, for example, don't. And that's where I think
grants don't work. I have seen how badly managed a lot of the grants.
What's the worst grant story that you have seen? Or the funniest?
So the methanol story is one of them. The other one was this guy wanted to make amazing bowls and stuff and whatever, and he chose to first go and do. I don't know. Ugandans love this thing, benchmarking. We love that thing. And by the way, government loves benchmarking. Before they do anything, say, but first give us money, we go benchmarking. So this guy went benchmarking on how to make a bowl, which he said he was going to make, and he made a few bowls, and the bowls were not actually, he kind of went flat as well. But the truth is, grants, when you haven't put your skin in the game, you don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
It's like, you've just gotten money. For many of you who, I know many of you go to all of these nice, I won't mention the bars, those nice bars where, a bottle of something is like, I'll tell you a simple story. Let me deviate a little bit. 2 weeks ago, I went to one of these nice places. I went to the nice places, and on the next table were two young men who had bought a bottle. And nowadays when they bring in the bottle, they bring it with a big candle. Ooh, yeah, with the song and everything, and nice ladies. So these guys drank 2 bottles of Don Julio. It's the new thing in town. So I asked my guy who I was chilling with on the table, I said, bro, we need to pull off one of those things. How much is that? Guy said, it's 700K. And I said, what? I said, a guy who has worked for his money cannot be spending his money like that. And that's true. Because if you're a real entrepreneur and you are looking at every coin going through your business, you know that even a boarder telling you it's 2K is lying.
Yeah, let's do 1.5.
He's lying, because there's something. I mean, you need to save everything. So it's the financial discipline. It's the financial discipline.
Yeah.
The need to sacrifice now for later.
Yeah.
Many of us are a little bit impatient. There was a guy in COVID who said, if your money doesn't solve your problems, eat it, right? And indeed, we ate our money. But when I think about it now, we listened to the wrong motivational speaker.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it's important for you to understand that, you have to sacrifice a lot. Most entrepreneurs,
and also save, right?
I know, most founders are stingy with their money, and they're so basic in how they live their lives and their passions. So
I think here at StartHub, I'm known as the most stingy person around.
Really?
You see, my team is laughing.
I think that might impact on the team culture. But anyway, we can talk about that next time. You can call me for team building. But
we have a lean cost structure. No, but it's good. And you see it even in the consumer markets, right?
Yeah.
Like Ugandans actually like to consume and also money that they don't have. Or if you look at weddings, it's the same thing, right? Like how many people? How many people do you know that got into debt because of wedding?
Yeah, but again, also sometimes the banks are to blame. A bank is willing to give a guy a loan for a wedding.
They're not just there to make profits.
Or a car, and not to give a guy money for a business. I mean, we have a lot of wedding meetings. Tomorrow I'm going for a wedding launch. Imagine if we're having business launches, man. Or we have.
But I've heard about this 8 years ago. Where are they?
Bro, so when you say you're going to a business, Ugandans, we're interesting people, but that's how we are. You talk about a business idea or whatever with people or friends, it's not that hype a thing. In fact, in the first 20 minutes, you'll be serious, and after 30 minutes, you're talking about Arsenal and Liverpool, and that's it, and you deviate. But, what I'm simply saying is that I think we just need to have this mentality of coming together. When I was in the UK, what I noticed about the Indian community was you have people coming into, let's say one guy owns a house.
Yeah.
And 5 guys come from India and get into the same house. In the next 1 year, one guy has left the house and now owns a house. And it's just like that and like that and like that. On the Ugandan community side, especially if you're illegal, if you're doing well, people are snitching on you. When I was illegal, you go to a disco and you're looking at the door just to make sure that, the equivalent of ice, doesn't come through. But, it's just because our culture is not built around trust and coming together to do stuff, great stuff. A lot of time it's about, people are scared of sharing ideas. I remember on Twitter when I went in and said, share with me a great brilliant business idea that we can think of funding. Bro, trolls came out for me and said, Otoa, I gotta put business ideas somewhere. That guy is a thug, he's just trying to steal your ideas. But the truth is, if you have a good idea that can actually be stolen, you should be happy that you actually have an idea.
Yeah.
But most people, I have my idea. What's your idea? I won't tell you. After one year, how far with your idea?
We have founders coming to us, asking us for support.
Right.
And we ask them, okay, what are you trying to do? And they're like, I know, I can tell you.
Exactly. And after 1 year, how is business? I'm still cooking the idea, man. It's coming. It's about
We're working on it.
We are so scared of sharing our ideas. And the problem with that is that it just makes our ideas, there's a very interesting speaker I love who said, the most wealthiest place, I don't know, do you guys know the wealthiest place on the planet?
Yes.
Where? The graveyard. And you know why? So many ideas, so many concepts, so many business plans and everything goes 6 feet.
I think this guy goes to the same church with you, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, mine is the Church of Life, so it should be a member. But yeah, so many business ideas go under the under the ground just because people have not explored them.
Nice. So we were talking about entrepreneurs and how the whole environment can help them to do better. We talked about government. What about the ecosystem, the support ecosystem? What does it need to do better? There's a lot of talk. I think we're still not super integrated. So what needs to happen so that we have a vibrant ecosystem that actually supports the entrepreneurs?
Collaboration. That's all I'll say.
And how do you get to collaboration?
It's easy. Look at it this way. If you think about most of the tech companies right now, they've ditched the whole idea of competing and are collaborating. Who knew that all of these tech companies would be getting ideas from, competitors and working together to make magic, and they're still making money?
But translated to the ecosystem. So
ecosystem.
Yep.
So look, let's say my brother with Kafresh, he wants to do a lot of magic in the food sector. Okay. Now you have another guy who has a transport situation that is not actually getting lift off.
Yep.
Then you have another guy who's probably in the food business with him.
Yep.
And can actually do better if they came together, put their manpower together, capital together, and do magic.
So you're actually talking about collaboration among the founders.
But also the ecosystem itself.
Yeah.
Why should startup act in isolation of the incubator, for instance, the Sambi Business Incubator, or work in isolation of Innovation Village and all of these? Because you see, all of these have their unique selling points, but if you come together, you can actually do great for the people that actually need you. And I think for me, that is what's really key. Collaboration.
Amazing. And we've talked a bit about the entrepreneurs as well. But what are the key things from all the founders that you have seen that founders need to do better to really build these large companies and want to see down the road?
Keep learning. Our entrepreneurial mindset in Uganda is arrivism.
Yeah.
You hit big and you think you've arrived. And that's it. So you stop. The hunger disappears.
Yeah.
The hunger that you had on day one disappears. The attitude towards the hustle culture disappears. And you actually think you've made it. Many people talk big and all of a sudden after 2-3 months, or rather 2-3 years, they fed out.
Yeah.
Truth is you have to stay hungry. That's number one. Keep learning. I always say the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. Keep learning. Learn things that are totally out of your loop. The best business idea could actually be from outside your loop. Yes, you're concentrating on that one thing that you want to do. It's amazing. But the thing that can actually take you to the next level could be outside your loop.
Yeah, I love it. Also, we've really tried at the university level to see if we can get high growth tech companies.
Right.
It's really hard, and the biggest issue is the exposure. The lack of understanding of possible markets and opportunities. We always see the same B2C ideas because students mostly understand customers. We've seen so many student hostel platforms and so on, right? It's always the same thing, and exactly because of that.
Yeah, it's just the same thing. Yeah. So you need to step out of your comfort zone and just do things differently. But I think what's really, really key is mentorship.
Yep.
It's great to feel like you're a founder and you've made it, but without a mentor, it becomes so tricky.
Yeah.
My mentor coach, Aga Sekalala, has always told me one thing, having a mentor is like standing on the shoulder of a giant.
Yeah.
They've been there, they've seen it all.
Yeah.
And they know what works and what doesn't work.
Here's a good one, because I get also quite a few people that ask, do you want to be my mentor? No introduction, I don't know them, nothing. Of course I'll say no, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a big commitment, right? So what's your advice if someone has this big shot idea, they're working on it, all good, how do you find people that can actually support on whose shoulders you can stand? What's the right way to?
How do you find a mentor?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
For everyone in the room.
Again, it's a difficult thing to really pinpoint, but I can tell you that there are many people who are out there and willing to support and help you with your big idea. It's just that you haven't approached them, or we haven't had the chance to approach them. But you see, mentors are also people who are busy. And you see, again, many of us along the mentorship process are not willing to go through the hard punches that a lot of the mentors have gone through and are trying to direct us through. So because of that, there's also the mentorship fatigue from the potential mentors. So usually, like when like a mentor, like you approach a guy, it's like no. The last 5 guys I tried to support, they were problematic. But you see, you have to understand that one, this is a guy who has less time, so you have to make every moment worth it. And many of them, I mean, just an hour of their time has to be worth it. But you have to be intentional. It goes back to your intentionality. You have to be intentional. What are the 2 or 3 key things you want to get out of that relationship, that mentorship? It might not be everything about this guy's business, but it might just be about his work ethic.
Yes.
It might be about how he handles his people. It might be about how he does his networking. Just those 3 things.
Just whatever challenges you're facing, right?
Exactly.
What I've seen a lot of people, and that also counts for me, they're very happy to support if it just doesn't take long, right? It could even be on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You ask one question and you'll get your response.
Yeah.
Likely, but don't ask someone to be their mentor for the next 2 years. Right?
No, absolutely. And again, it's also how we communicate. And by the way, communication, entrepreneurs forget that communication is one of the most important things they have to have. Public speaking. If you can't speak, you can't sell.
Yep.
We talk about pitch decks and all of these things, and people do all these fancy slides and whatever. But you see, if you can't explain what's on that pitch deck, you're pretty much walking in the blind. Now, someone is approaching a mentor, and the first thing they do is say, "Hi." Then this guy, by the way, poor guy is busy, he says hi back. Hi. Say, how are you? A guy's like,
it's like one of these conversations that last over 40 days. And
I'm very well. How can I help you?
And then they want to take a picture first.
I like what you do, and I was just saying hello. But so I mean, look. Instantly, if I was a potential mentor, I'm already bored, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, how am I going to deal with this guy first of all, even in the mentorship, man? Next. Yeah, and you move on. So communication is very, very key. I mean, how you communicate with your potential mentor, but also in your entrepreneurial journey. And for me, I've always thought communication is what will take you places. It's what will open doors for you because people don't have time to. I don't know. How many of you have been in pitching situations where a guy explains his product, and you look at the guy and ask yourself if the guy even knows his product? Yeah? You've been in that situation. And it's crazy because poor guy has done a magical thing, but he can't express it. And that's why, again, a lot of takers will always have to have that motor mouth guy. A guy like Tony Otoa, who will come and tell you, bro,
I mean, for you, we can throw you on any stage without preparation, you will talk. That's no problem. But I think it even goes beyond that, right? You don't need to be that stage person, right? The communication can also be much more subtle. Introverts can do it equally as good, and it's something that you can learn. That was also important, or it's something that I've learned. Right, for me, I was when I started my career, I was super nervous, even just to get up and introduce myself, my name and what I study. Right, I get super nervous, but it's something you do it a lot of times. Like when you pitch a business, after you've done it 20 times, you do it when you're asleep. It doesn't matter. It's really something. It's just practice. And that's super important, especially for those that are not so confident to do it. Throw yourself out there. Prepare well. I think you will over-prepare, and that's good. Eventually, you will not need it anymore.
Yeah, but also, in addition to that, Matthias, is the idea of self-awareness.
Yep.
Self-awareness. I'm a coach when it comes to Clarity 4D. And in Clarity 4D perception tests or personality tests, what we do is look at the personality that you are. And we do it in colors. And let me explain this. So you have the reds, okay? The reds are we have to go now. I don't care whether Matthias is on board. To hell with him, man. We're moving, you know what? And now usually with them, they don't plan so well. They are really hard on their processes and they want to go. And they find a lot of problems, then come back and they do not really own up and want to go back again. And those are the reds, They're aggressive. A lot of leaders are usually in the red section. Then you have the blues. The blues are your meticulous. We're going to StartHub. Okay, you have to pass on Tinder. If you pass on Tinder, you have to go through Bukoto. Bukoto, you'll branch. They plan. They're meticulous. They will question why there's no full stop on at the end of the sentence. They're that meticulous. The problem with them is that they're so annoying because you can't move. You know, you want to move, and the guy says, "No, the plan is not yet ready. The plan we have to." You're like, "Bro, we will work it along the way." They're like, "No, everything has to be in line." So those are the blues, very annoying, and Then I've talked about the reds and the blues. Now you have the greens. The greens are your empathetic, compassionate people. If Matthias is not coming on the trip, I think we should just cancel the trip. We're a team. We're no, I don't like how that colleague spoke to the other one. We need to gel. We need to, they're nice people, but they also sometimes, when they're annoying because when you piss them off, they are the guys who just go into their zone and just let you die or burn. Yeah, so the greens they're your emotional people. A lot of HR people, by the way, fall in that category. Then you have the yellows, like me. We're happy go-getters. We just like to talk and have a good time and high energy. We are the life of the party. We don't like to be criticized. We don't like to be told our ideas are not great ideas. We don't like to be told to tone down. We don't like to. So all of these characters have their good and bad.
Yep.
Now, when you're communicating, if I'm communicating with a red, I instantly know he's going to be aggressive. So I need to do stuff his way in order to flow. If it's a blue and I'm doing a presentation, I can't just go and just give a one-pager.
You need details.
They need details. So a blue, you take a whole pamphlet and put it on the table. They are okay with it. You can't give a whole pamphlet to a yellow like me because for me, tell me the idea, let's run.
Exactly.
Now with
summary,
me,
Max.
if you look at my team, most of my team members are blues because they're meticulous. Because I'm the kind of guy you give an idea, before you finish telling me what the idea is, I'm already running. So I need a blue to moderate me and get things in line and plan. So communication again goes back to that personality. So self-awareness, very, very important.
Super.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about investments. Have you invested some of your own cash into Uganda's small businesses?
Yes.
So I'm curious, whatever you want to share, can you mention a few of the stories and learnings especially? Like what have you learned that you didn't know about entrepreneurs and businesses in Uganda from your investment experiences?
So first of all, this might sound a little controversial, but I can never invest again with friends and family. Because, people don't take stuff seriously at a certain point. And it's your money, on the line. And along the way, you'll find that laissez-faire attitude towards the activity or the opportunity, and instantly you're not killing it.
Yep.
Now, when you start asking to buy out, whoa, that's where now trouble comes, and your grandfather's name can easily even pop up. It's so weird. So one of the things I found out is that people that you're very familiar with, sometimes don't take the business conversation or hassle seriously.
Yeah.
The businesses I've invested in, there's one that does welding of grills right now. And I knew these kids when they were at welding school.
Yep.
I've actually benefited from that because we have that professional relationship of, okay, how much sales, where's the money, how are we doing, and all of that.
Yep.
Whenever it's a family member or a situation like that, you're meeting at a bar to discuss the business, and instantly after 3 Nile specials, you're probably even drinking the business money. That's another story. But you see, that is one thing.
So no family.
So for me, I wouldn't really encourage family, if anything. But the other very important thing is for you to understand the vision of the business you're investing in. And more importantly, the vision bearer, the founder. A lot of the time, you'll find that the businesses you want to invest in have people who are just doing it just for the sake of it. And yet, they're not really passionate about it. They're not willing to go the extra mile.
So you want to know their why.
So you want to know why they're doing it.
Yep.
And the why is very important because, again, I like the way Simon Sinek says it. Everyone knows how to do it. Everyone knows what they have to do. but very few know why they're doing it. And that's a very important thing. So again, what's the agenda behind the whole thing? What's the vision? What's the vision bearer thinking about?
And what did you learn about the businesses and founders from investing in companies? For me, when I started to put some small checks, I really looked at some of those businesses differently and at the founders. Is there any lessons that you can pick from there?
I'll be honest with you, there's no blueprint. I think when I'm dealing with people, especially young people, I deal with each individual as they come. Because, I mean, it's different backgrounds, it's different attitudes towards money. Most of the founders I've actually met have never experienced more than 20 million in their account. Or 30 million shillings in their account. So it becomes one of the guys I'm working with who's doing chili, House or Joke. How many of you have seen House or Joke? It's fantastic chili. If you don't know about it, I have considered myself.
We work with him.
I have made myself now the Kampala distributor. If I see it in your supermarket anywhere, I will arrest you. But I'm joking, jokes aside. But you see, House of Joke, his idea for me is very simple. And in terms of investment, I'm saying, look, I'm not going to even put in a lot of money into your thing. I'm not willing to put money into your thing. But I'm going to do my roast business with you as the brand. Okay? And by doing you as the brand, we are using it as an advertising space, but also a selling spot. So if people see this anywhere, they remember Comrades Grill or House of Joke. And for me, that works. And I love it, because, again, it's a different approach to how I'm, supporting an entrepreneur. If I'm dealing with my roasting guys, the guys who are making the grills, right? It's a different approach, How many can we roll out and how much money can we make? It's a different thing for all.
So it's all about the person, right?
Right.
So what are the key traits that you're really looking out for when you see that founder?
Hungry. Has to be a hustle guy. Hungry. The guys who you see and instantly, this guy is just chilling. He's just too comfortable. I don't think.
Not do the dirty work.
There's a lady, I won't mention her name. She makes amazing chili. Man, her sauces are really amazing. I've asked her several times to deliver, and she'll just send you like one, or not even send any. And yet she has a beautiful skill. But again, it also made me realize that some entrepreneurs are like creators. People in the creative industry. My brother is an amazing painter. I've asked him to do work or commission work to do for amazing friends who have events, and he'll simply tell you, "I'm not feeling it, so I won't do it." And you're like, "Bro, there's money on the line." And I'm not in my.
So you also want aggressive executors, if I get you right? Like hungry and executing, just getting stuff done, shipping products.
Nice. So you have to manage them. One of the most amazing people I know, Madok Semakula, he's a Mwirian like me. Whenever we have to invite him to an event, we have to manage him for a week, because if we don't manage him, he can easily say, "I'm not feeling that event." So we have to manage him. So it's the same thing. You have to also go back, the background, and again, look at the people who are probably supporting these guys outside their entrepreneurship space and work with them to manage that relationship. Very important as well.
So now I want to understand something. You've worked with so many sectors all across the country, hundreds to thousands of entrepreneurs. So let's say someone comes tomorrow and gives you $10 million to invest in Uganda's small businesses. How would you allocate that money? And try to be a bit specific. Like, what kind of businesses would you choose? What sectors? You have complete freedom. You can give someone $500. You can invest much larger amounts, equity, debt, whatever you want. Like, how would you allocate that money? I want to know where you see the opportunities here.
To be honest with you, I think I see a lot of opportunities in food. The beautiful thing about food is that food is, Kafresh, food is one sector where you can't go wrong. Our only problem in Uganda and why food doesn't really kill it is because we have it in abundance. That's a fact. We have it in abundance. But if you think about Kenya, for instance, Uganda is seen as a food basket, And again, the president one time said the reason why Ugandans are lazy is because we have too much food. And that's probably true. You can't sleep hungry. if anything, you can find food anywhere. But I think food is one area I would do that. Again, it's not just food itself, but the value addition of it.
Okay. So food processing.
Food processing and all of that. And you know, there's a huge opportunity right there. I was speaking to my very interesting friend or counterpart at Uganda Airlines. And she told me one of the biggest challenges they have for Uganda Airlines is food.
Yep.
And I was like, no, but there's a lot of food. It's like, no, I'm talking about quality food.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay. Then she asked me, when you fly, whenever you fly Uganda Airlines, what juice do you see? Did you know that the juice is actually Kenyan juice that is on Uganda Airlines?
Yes.
But did you know that we have Teju in Soroti and right now suffering with capacity problems? So again, it's all of these things. You know, there's a lot of opportunities there, but we're just
it's back to reliability for them, right?
Again, and then I mean, you know, water now is becoming a cool thing as well. When I was growing up, if you were to be considered a cool guy, a cool dude, you had to have a bottle of mineral water and your phone on the belt. Do you guys remember that? for you old guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? If your father never did that, he was not a serious guy. But anyway, it was cool to walk with a mineral water bottle and a mobile phone because those were the coolest things. Now, deep in my village, there's mineral water. You know, it's not, you know, but now the consumption of that is going up. I remember when Jibu was starting out in 2017, 2016, around that time. It was such a small company, and people were like, who is actually going to buy water for drinking at home, which we can boil and da-da-da-da? Right now, Jibu is international.
Yeah,
and they're doing this.
In so many markets.
In our households, we use Jibu more than anything. You know, and that's crazy. It shows you how, again, those ideas are, you know, right. So, for me, it's about things that people consume. People consume. I mean, someone last week told me, how about we set up a factory for nails? I'm like, what? Nails? So, yeah, you see, people need nails. And I thought about it, and actually, people need nails. How many of you know how much a kilogram of nails is?
Very cheap. Because of the size.
A kilogram of nails. Yeah, but a kilogram. How much is a kilogram? No, a kilogram goes for about 7,000, 8,000. A kilogram of nails. And you see, the funny thing about nails is very few make a kilogram. And I thought about it, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, but who are we going to sell them to? But anyway, there's so many ideas where you can actually put this. But I think for me, food is very interesting.
This one is construction.
Construction
materials.
Great. I mean, if you look at the rise of hardware shops today, in every small trading center, there's potentially a hardware store. Because again, construction is going crazy.
Super exciting. I think the last thing before we open for questions, and you mentioned it, like there's a lack of capital for Uganda, especially the upcoming entrepreneurs in the early stage and so on. At the same time, when you talk to so many ecosystem players, financiers and so on, they complain about readiness, right? We talked about financial structures not being in place, documentation is not there, compliance is not there, the risk profile is just not good. So what really needs to happen so that we see more capital flowing into the markets? Is it an availability of capital problem, or is it a readiness problem, and to what extent?
I think when I was at the incubator, I always said it this way: there's enough capital around. It's just that there are not as many attractive businesses for that capital. And just like I said again, going into a disco, you have to be prepared and attractive. You know, many capital opportunities are lost around preparedness. I remember African Development Bank had come to us and they wanted to support women entrepreneurs. But again, there were hardly enough women entrepreneurs to take on the financing because the ticket sizes that they were looking at were between 50,000 to 100,000. Now, if you look into our Ugandan ecosystem, you won't find as many women-led enterprises needing or having that. Needing that kind of money, or they would need that kind of money, but
they're not ready. They
can't
deploy
to take it on
efficiently.
I mean, if you look at the Grow project today, it's probably suffering also the same hurdles, the preparedness. So there's more time needed to be spent on preparing the businesses to be ready. for that kind of funding. And again, when you look at MasterCard Foundation as well, with their PSFU program, they had all this money, but the businesses to take on the money were hardly there.
Yeah.
So again, you have now to go look at a business, get it up, prop it up, build it up, then ask them, are you ready? Before they're saying they're ready, the grant opportunities are done.
Yeah.
Now you have now to wait for another one. Then just wait. There's another one that might come. Just be ready. Just keep practicing what we said. And it's preparedness. Yeah.
And we talked about that, right? Like the key things once again is how do you handle your team, communication, and financial structures.
Yeah. And again, I always say, there's nothing like luck. Sometimes I'm saying, hey, the guy was lucky, he had the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just someone being prepared and waiting for the opportunity. So that's that intersection between preparedness and opportunity. That's where the luck comes in.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, I think, that we see so many times that, we are 80% entrepreneurs, as we saw in the beginning here. And I think when you do these surveys and ask founders what they need, it's always the capital. And then from the other side, it's the preparedness, right? So that's really the clash. So,
Hardly do you find founders saying, I need mentorship fast.
Or I want to be fully compliant and get my books in order.
No.
No one's excited about that.
And there's a Uganda thing that says, Twagala Sente. You've heard that one there? You've seen it, huh? So Twagala Sente, we want money and we want it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think I thank you already so much for all the insights. This was a lot of fun.